set of that film, and I've seen some footage from that film, and I'll tell you, that is one that you're going to want to see. I mean, it's fantastic with Daniel Craig and Harrison Ford and the things he's put together. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but we're also going to talk a lot about Iron Man, and a movie that, along with Dark Knight, really sort of set the stage for what a superhero movie should be and could be. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Jon Favreau. I know how busy you are. Thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Look at this. Happy people.
Thank you for coming. It's so funny watching that last end credit scene, because all the stuff that we did in Iron Man, in the first Iron Man film, was so seat of the pants, and hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this, and should we do a tag scene after the credits? Yeah, what should it be? Oh, you know what? We should get Nick Fury. If we could get Sam Jackson, as a secret, let's have just as an Easter egg, because he was who they based the ultimate Nick Fury on. And we contacted him, he was willing to do it. We were just putting together what's it going to be, and the whole Avengers thing was just, and the shield, you know, the Captain America shield that's become so important, was just a joke from one of the ILM artists. They snuck it in for one of our CineSync sessions. And I was like, leave it in, leave it in. Next thing you know, it's becoming, everybody's pointing to it as like, what did that mean?
Yeah.
What, you know?
And like a Beatles album. Everybody's like reading this.
Why are his shoes off? And then, of course, by the second film, it became, you know, all about. It became a big part of the agenda of Iron Man 2 was to set up the Avengers. But all of this stuff when we first did it was just like we were just honestly tickling ourselves because we didn't know if anybody would care. And then it's turned into now this whole. It became this whole self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and it's amazing too. I mean, you guys came in, and you know, I was on that set of the first one, and talking to you then, and the things that you guys made a priority. I mean, there really hadn't really been a West Coast superhero. There hadn't been like a movie with this kind of velocity, and it felt like a James Bond kind of universe. You guys really had the openness of not having a lot of rules, and it showed.
It was really good because it allowed me to bring what I feel like I could bring to something like this, which is to make it plausible and grounded. And the closer to reality we kept it, the more I felt I could contribute something and do something special with it. You know, so I would drive past the pier on the way home, the Santa Monica Pier, and I would be like, that would be a cool place to have him fly. Like if I could fly, that's where I would fly. Yeah. And then in the second one, sorry if anybody hasn't seen it yet. Spoiler. It's across the street from my house. The building that they land on was the building I grew up in. It was called the Fairview, and that's even where I get the name of my company, Fairview Entertainment, is from that building. And so the view I'm seeing, you're seeing from the top when they're after the World's Fair blows up. And of course the World's Fair, I grew up, it was gone by the time I was born, but I would see the leftovers from it. And so I would say, what a great place. You know, always we wanted to put it in Disneyland. That was like, where should we have the ending in Disneyland? We're never going to get Disneyland. But we created our World's Fair, what it would be like now. So that was a real fantasy for me to see what the World's Fair would look like. And it was very strange, I think, for my dad when you see all the buildings on fire. Basically the view from my childhood out my window with everything on fire out the window.
Is there something you want to tell?
Exactly. It's like when a little kid, if you say to a little kid, draw your house, and then he draws a house burning, you get a call from the principal saying, come down, we should have a conversation. Well, that's what that was, I guess.
You know, and there's such a great freshness to the movie, and I really meant what I said. You know, I think Dark Knight and Iron Man really are the pivot points, kind of setting the tone as we move forward. And Iron Man, just so much fun. It's great summer without being condescending and stuff. But talk a little bit about you're very welcome. But talk a little bit about the tone and the humor, because that's so key to it.
Well, I always figure, you know, inevitably I'll always, if there's a laugh to be had, you know, we'll find it, and if it doesn't blow the reality, we'll go for it. And especially with the casting of Robert Downey Jr., who's, you know,
Robert Downey Jr. You guys
think he was just really the heart and soul of the whole thing. And when I was able to, you know, you probably all know already, it was very difficult to cast him. That was not who this new studio felt they wanted to necessarily brand themselves with as their main guy. They didn't know he hadn't really, you know, proven himself that he could draw audiences, but we knew he was right. And I remember I met with him, and I was like, this guy's, oh my God, it's just, he looks great, his attitude's perfect, and he was passionate about the role. And from the moment we finally got to cast him, and he had to screen test for it, and he did. He fought his way to get the part. He blew everybody away. They couldn't make an argument against him.
Wow.
God bless him. He worked hard, and I told him no. I said, it's not going to happen. He said, I'd like to keep fighting for it. I was like, I'll go as long as you do. He did it. They couldn't argue with him. He did it for a song, and the minute he came on board, everything changed. He, you know, all of a sudden, all these cast members were eager to get involved. Gwyneth became involved. It was very easy to cast Jeff Bridges. Yeah. And his whole personality informed a realistic view of Tony Stark, not just because of the role as it's written, but has so much is read into it because of, you know, you really believe that Robert could have lived in this environment and grown jaded with the world of, you know, fame, and just understands how to move through a room like a guy who's been famous since he was a kid, because Robert has been, you know, he's been a star since he started. And he grew up, you know, in a family where his father was a director and around Hollywood and New York and the film scene. So that was a big part of the tone. And we just hit it off really well and made each other laugh, and he would always like to do things different, and I was always comfortable with a certain amount of uncertainty. And I remember the first one was very much grounded in terrorism and, you know, the idea of pulling back, of a guy having a drink in the Humvee, starting with AC/DC, which is something like a Marvel movie had never done, like a needle drop like that. Yeah. And then boom, it blows up. You pull back, and he's in looks like a beheading video. It was like, that's real. Yeah. Like, you're in. And what's this movie going to be? Yeah. And all of a sudden, by having that start off, he became this incredibly sympathetic character because you knew he was in deep trouble. And that's also an old JJ trick. He, like, you know, he'll put you right in the middle of things, like in Mission Impossible.
That's right. The hood comes off.
And there you are, right in the middle of it. It's a good device, and I think he gets it a lot from Spielberg too, who, like, you know, the shark eats the woman, and then, well, okay, now what's going on? Right. You know, it puts you right in the middle of it in a clever way. And I think that bought us a lot of goodwill and allowed Robert, and also so charming, to joke around and do things that might not be likable if it were written in the script and other actors were doing it. And all of a sudden we got we just made the world as real as possible. We said there's one difference, that there's this technology and the Stark family that never existed in real life, and how would that change, how would that butterfly wing flap change our reality? Yeah. And then, of course, as you get further and further into it, you start to have to contend with these choices that you make, and it becomes like you're juggling more and more chainsaws. Yeah. And it becomes harder and harder for me, because I like to ground things in the real world and see what one element we can twist or exaggerate, and that's really that's really what satire is. You're telling a greater truth by exaggerating an aspect of reality, but it's not parody, right? Which is different, which is where you're just making jokes about everything.
It's just a few degrees instead of being broad.
Right. You crank one thing up and then maybe make a larger statement. And that's what was really fun about this one, especially the first one, where, you know, there was people, no matter what their political background, would come up to me and said, you really captured something here, yeah. Which I think is the highest compliment. If no matter what your political views, you see truth in something, it says a lot.